All right, Danny, you can take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Advocacy 101, How to Make a Difference. This is a Lunch and Learn webinar brought to you by West Virginia Environmental Council, West Virginia Rivers Coalition, and West Virginia Citizen Action Group. We love that you're here, and we hope you'll share this recording far and wide after, and join us for our second webinar coming up next month. Again, this is just a 101, so we are going over the absolute basics, but let's check out our first slide. This is our sort of level setting, where we're at, what our agenda is going to look like. So first, we're going to do a really like bird's eye overview of the legislative process. It is possible to dig a lot deeper into that. We'll ask that at any point, if you have questions, you go ahead and add those to the chat. We'll take all questions in Q&A at the very end. So if you have specific questions about what we're talking about, feel free to just stack them in there. Toss all your questions in and we will get to them in order as it makes sense. So we're going to do an overview of the legislative process, how to find your representatives and track a bill. Mike's going to talk to you about why you should advocate, how to craft your message for advocacy, and what that process actually looks like. And then we're all going to talk a little bit about how to stay involved in some upcoming goodness. But before we get really dug in, I do have a quick poll for you that Jillian's going to run just to see how in depth we've got to get on our explanations here for our audience. So Jillian, you don't mind, run that poll just really quick. We're only going to give this a minute. So
I
those of
think
you
I
guys who
launched
are,
it.
I got it, I see it. So
Okay,
anybody
cool.
who's joining on mobile or having trouble, don't feel pressure. This is just an informal situation. So if you're fighting with your technology, don't worry about it.
I'm just so proud I was able to launch it.
You did such a good. Zoom keeps changing. Things are harder all the time. So go, Jillian.
Can you see the results, Danny?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
So we're looking at right about 6% at very familiar. Y'all might be a little bored, so feel free to jump in and correct me or expand on it. Somewhat familiar with 81%. So you guys are like aware of the process, but maybe not the details. And then got 12% not familiar. So we are going to, because 12% is a fairly significant amount, we are going to tailor our messaging to y'all. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll. Jillian, you got it? There we go. All right. So first up, we're going to talk about a glossary, sort of like the handful of terms that you might need to know and the folks that you might need to be familiar with. The West Virginia legislature is made up of Senate and our House of Delegates. Those are collectively referred to as the separate chambers. They are literally on different sides of the Capitol, and they each have their own committee structure as well. Each chamber has to pass the bill, and then the governor must sign the bill before it becomes a law. And you can get into the nitty gritty here. Sometimes the House will pass a bill and the Senate will amend the language. If that happens, it has to go back to the House. And then sometimes they fight back and forth a little bit and they neither one of them agrees. And then they have to elect what's called a conference committee, where there are members of each House who decide on the specific language of the bill before it can pass through both chambers. That'll happen, you'll see, especially with really high profile ones. As I mentioned a little bit before, each bill is referenced to committees. Once those committees pass the bill, then the bill is read 3 times before the third or final reading and the vote. The committees are one of the places where you and I get to make the absolute most difference. Those are folks who get to be sort of issue area experts for the things that they're looking at. And so a lot of times bills will be cross-referenced to a couple of committees. Usually 2 is fairly standard practice. We see a lot of ability to move things in judicial, for example. We're going to, in 102, talk a whole lot about judicial committees on both sides. So if you have any specific questions about those committees, stack them in the chat. But I can tell you on the lobbying side that which committees pick up a bill is one of the major places where both lobbyists and citizen advocates can make a huge difference. You've got a smaller number of folks to reach out to. You've got more tailored messaging. These people really understand the issue. And it's in general just a lot more approachable than a floor session, which is huge and is the whole chamber. Mike, is there anything you'd like to add to that section? Good deal. Okay. And another big glossary piece is crossover day. Crossover day is the final day for bills to pass from their chamber of origin. So an example is we at West Virginia Rivers and West Virginia Citizen Action and eCouncil are working on a bill about abandoned wells. And so we have a legislative champion in Delegate Evan Hansen who will introduce that bill. Let's go. And in order for the Senate to pick that bill up on the other side, Delegate Hansen's version has to pass out of the House. So it has to go through all three readings and its committees, not in that order. Committees first, then all three readings, and be passed out of the House of Delegates before the Senate can take it up. And so by February 28th, we would call it dead. Of course, there are ways around that. And we've added here to this slide, remember they can and do change the procedures. They can suspend the rules and pass things more quickly. They can skip committees, or they can, once crossover day has passed, if they're really attached to some language, add it on to existing bills. But just as a matter of process, for the most part, this is how it works. And when it doesn't work this way, you will hear from us about it because we are tracking and keeping an eye on it and making sure that everything is available for public comment because the legislative process is for us. These are our elected officials and our voice is really important here. And I'm saying collective hour. They're tired of hearing from me. They know I work there. They know that I'm there to reference the things that I am paid to talk about. So really our citizens. So you guys, your voice is what's most important. All right. Next slide is going to be how to find your representatives. This is especially important because every 10 years, in accordance with the census process, we do a little process called redistricting. And boy, sometimes redistricting can be super duper confusing for us, the voters, and for the folks who are being represented. This go around, actually last year, redistricting was extra crazy because we changed the structure of the House of Delegates. So formerly, if you lived in a really populated place, you would have multiple delegates who represented you. And now we are down to single member districts. So I even still sometimes have to look this up in certain places, even though this is my whole life and my job. I'm all in and still can't keep it all straight. So finding your specific representatives is sometimes the first hurdle and sometimes where people get turned off of advocacy. So here I have a QR code for a Common Causes lookup tool. That tool is extremely comprehensive. I'm going to toggle over to that tool right now. So here we are at Common Causes page. They're an organization that we at Citizen Action have worked with in the past and trust. So this is a quick and easy way to find all of your representatives. I'm going to go ahead and enter the address for Citizen Action's office just to see who represents us there because I love y'all, but you don't need to know my home address. So we live in CAG at 1500 Dixie Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We're going to go ahead and hit submit there. And this tool is super duper comprehensive. It's got everybody and their details and some bills that they've introduced. But for the purposes of this and for E-Day in particular, which we're leading up to with this conference and this webinar, we're going to focus on our state representatives. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my little laser pointer. Here we go. Gosh, I love the laser pointer. All right. It's the simple things, y'all. As a former teacher, it's important to me. All right. So down here, we're going to start looking at our state senators. So you'll see here, 1500 Dixie Street has 2 of those. And our state delegate is Delegate Mike Pushkin. So we're going to use him as an example. We're going to go ahead and hit see details here. And we've got his phone number and his email address, and then a handful of bills that he has sponsored. I always encourage folks to double check, cross-reference the contact information on any outside site with the West Virginia Legislature page. wvlegislature.gov is going to be our next deep dive, and that page is comprehensive and not specifically intuitive, but super, super useful when you know how to navigate. First and foremost, wvlegislature.gov is going to list all of the contact information, both in district and at the Capitol for your representative. So you can call their home office if they have a home office. You can call their office at the Capitol. You can also get an array of different emails and means of contacting them through wvlegislature.gov. So give everybody just a second. If you have any questions, don't forget to toss them in the chat. And I'm going to navigate over to the West Virginia Legislature page. Going to pause here briefly. Can everybody see it okay? I'm still doing well. Good deal. Thank you. Jillian has tossed that in the chat if anybody would like to double check it. wvlegislature.gov. So the first thing that we're going to do here is look up our delegates. So I'm going to go to House and then down to Delegates. And then I said I was interested in Mike Pushkin as our example because he's our representative at CAG. I don't know about y'all, but I'm real lazy. So instead of searching through this whole page, I'm going to on my keyboard hit Command because I have a Mac, but I would hit Control if I had a Windows, and then F as in Frank, Command F. And that allows me to search. Up here, you see this little search bar pop down. And I'm going to look for Pushkin. And lo and behold, there's Mike Pushkin. 54. Here's the address if you would like to send him postcards or if you would like to go visit him in the Capitol. And then here's, oh, look at that. I navigated away from it. How did I do that? And here's his email address and phone number where you can get a hold of him. Any questions on that process? Go ahead and talk a minute. All right. So up next from there, we're going to look at how to track a bill. If you go here to bill status, there's actually two options, bill status and bill tracking. Those aren't intuitively different. Those things tend to mean the same thing. But on the West Virginia Legislature's website, they do not. Bill status is where you'll go to look at which bills have been introduced, which bills are moving through committees, and the status of those bills. Bill tracking is actually an app that's built into the website where you can create your own list of bills to follow by inputting the bill number specifically. So you need one to get to the other. Bill tracking, I would say, is like a 201 level advocacy skill. So we're going to hold off on that one for a while, but feel free to reach out to me if you have specific questions. We're going to start at bill status right here. And I'm fighting with the Zoom bar because I always am. Here we go. So bill status. We're going to look at, let's say all bills coming from the House and see if we can't find one that we think is particularly interesting. Let's see. House Energy. Looking at some of these, Health and Human Resources. Do we have a bill number for the above ground storage tank bill or any of those others that have been discussed?
I was just looking for that. I know Delegate Hansen submitted the community solar bill already in the House.
Okay, then what I'll do instead is go down here to search bills by sponsor. I'm going to select a delegate and we want Delegate Hansen. And I do know the alphabet, Hansen. Here we are. That's him. And we're going to hit submit. So West Virginia Energy Efficiency Jobs Creation Act, like that, and then repealing the section of code authorizing additional registration used for alternative fuel vehicles. Ooh, those of you who drive hybrids or electric vehicles, that one's going to be important to you. So I'm going to go ahead and click that bad lad. So we've got 4771. And the House referenced it on its creation to House Finance on January 16th of 24. And here we have the actions. This is how you'll track where it's going. So got sent to House Finance, and that's where we are currently sitting. So House Finance will take it up, and then let's see, is it referenced to any other committees? I don't see that it is. And so that's how you follow those bills. Let's see, do we want to look up one in the Senate really quickly, just to see the same process? Oh, authorizing the DEP to promulgate rules. This one's relevant and interesting for those of you guys who are unaware. Department of Environmental Protection. That's an organization that we work closely with. So we'll hit SB2 here and see how it's going. Woodrum is the lead sponsor. And we've already got a committee substitute, so some changes to the bill. This one is a lot more detailed than the final one. And look at all this action. So starting on the 10th, it was filed for introduction, immediately referenced to Senate Judiciary. Com substitute, which means that the committee chose to change the text of the rule. And then it made it down to the floor, got through first, second, and third reading with the right to amend, and passed it over to the House. And that's how you track a bill through there. And if you are interested in just looking at the bills that are related to specific topics, you can also do that. So here you can search bills by subject. This is my favorite. Sometimes I just look through here to see what they're up to when I can't be at the Capitol. So if we hit subject right here, and then down here, we've got our drop-down list. So these are the bills requested by the government. But in my job, I'm particularly interested in utilities because I do a lot of work around energy freedom and utility rates. And so I'll just click this one here, and then I'll see all the bills that have been tagged with that subject matter. Very, very useful if you don't know a specific bill number, but you know vaguely what a bill is about, or you've heard people talking about a bill but need to track it down yourself. Any questions regarding that? Drop them in the chat, y'all. All right, and the final piece for the legislature's website is sort of the homepage. We've got a calendar here where you can look at all of the dates for things coming up. But the perhaps most important piece of the West Virginia Legislature's website is the bulletin board. This is going to be where you find up to date, up to the minute information about what's going on today in the legislature. So here for the 24 regular session, you've got bill history, topical index, committee schedule, and on the committee schedules is also where you can find those committee agendas to find out if your bill, the bill that you're really interested in, is going to be read or discussed in a committee at a given time. So super, super important, but easy to look over piece. Tracking down agendas for committees and agendas for floor sessions, and this is where you do that. All right. And again, if we have any questions, feel free to toss them in the chat. I'm going to stop my annotation and pass it over to Mike. Thank you guys for your patience with my info dumping and hope to answer some questions after.
Wow, Danny, thank you. That was just a great presentation. I use that website daily and still can't get around it as easily as you were showing us. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm going to talk a little bit now, kind of focused on the citizen advocate and how E-Day can help you get involved in the process. I'm going to start off with this picture of the Capitol. It's a gorgeous building, Golden Dome, all of that, but you've got these impressive stairway and it looks like it's almost impenetrable and hard to get into. But hopefully you'll find with the E-Day and with some of the help that we can give you that it's not scary at all. Once you get inside, people are very accessible. You see senators and delegates walking around the hallways. You can watch the chamber floor committee sessions. You can watch committee sessions, and you can find their offices very easy. So if I could have the next slide, please. So let's back to that kind of essential question. Why do we advocate as citizens? And, you know, there's really just kind of one simple reason. It's they're our representatives. We voted them in there. We want them to know what our opinions are. Of course, we're going to focus because of E-Day on delegates and senators in West Virginia, but we also have representatives and senators in Washington, D.C., and never forget your local officials. They can have a great impact on things around your locality and great places to advocate with. So we want to do a couple of things. We want to influence our legislators, our state delegates and our state senators' decisions on pending bills. And we hope to encourage them to pass favorable bills. And unfortunately, sometimes they file a bill that's not what we think is the best idea. So we want to stop those bad bills. And also, there's a place for advocacy in those non-elected governmental agencies, and we can help you with that as well. If I could have the next slide, please. So at West Virginia Rivers Coalition, we did a poll about, why do you advocate? Do you advocate? And we found out something really interesting. Most folks already do advocate. A lot of y'all and other folks have already written a letter, hit an action alert, and sent a message to your delegate or your senator. The number one need that people have is to know more about the issues, which is why CAG and West Virginia Rivers Coalition and eCouncil and other groups send out emails. And I think we saw the registration links to sign up for these various emails to tell you about what bills are coming up, what's going on. And groups send out what's called action alerts. Hey, this is coming up for a vote. Send a message to your senator or your delegate, click this button, and it's very effective and an easy way to advocate. People generally have positive experiences. Politics sometimes can feel really crazy, but if you feel like you've done something and said what you believe, it really has a positive feeling for you. And of course, there's always some frustrations. We're concerned that people don't listen. Sometimes I'm not listened to, and why should I bother? And what I would submit to you is that it does matter. We have seen time and time again that we've sent out an action alert and 3 or 4 or 500 of you start sending emails. That gets people's attention. We've heard senators say, that caused a particular legislation caused the biggest stir in the legislature this year, just because citizens were involved, prepared, and they got active. If I could have the next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. And have a little caution here. Advocacy does take time. When you send out that email, it's important, it's essential, but we took an example of the PFAS legislation that passed last year. It was a multi-year process to get the legislature interested, for them to do a study report, for them to finally pass the legislation. But that's only the middle of that slide. There's still, it's going to be multiple years of local reports and local planning and basically the implementation. So we encourage people to get involved, but to get involved in it as a process is something that's going to take some time. If I could have the next slide too, please. This is a nice graphic that we use at West Virginia Rivers. It kind of sets out the various 4 corners of how you do advocacy. There's what's known as the inside game. That's the lobbyists, that's the elected officials, that sort of thing. The bottom left-hand corner is the outside game. And that's where we citizen advocates come into play. It's our emails, it's our phone calls, it's our going to things like E-Day and being in the hallway with the group that we support, or being at a table with the group we support, or going and meeting with a legislator, or seeing a committee meeting. That's where we as citizens can have our input. If I could have the next slide, please. This is what's known as the advocacy pyramid, how people get engaged in the process. And we'll start at the bottom. You just become aware of a situation. You see that a stream near your home doesn't look quite right, or you become aware that solar energy may need some legislative help. So you become aware of an issue. That gets you doing things. It gets you reading, gets you signing up for newsletters, finding out more about it. Then you move into the stage where you're ready to do something, and you'll respond to an email. Send this message to your legislator to support and protect net metering on solar power. Send this message to your legislature to support the conservation of public that sort of thing. And that's critically important. Doing that is so fundamentally important and so powerful, and everybody that hits that button is to be commended. But I'd like to spend a minute kind of talking about those last two steps, the citizen advocate that's really getting involved with that. And that's picking up the phone and calling your legislature, and even more importantly, having a one-on-one meeting with your legislator. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is kind of our the people wanting to have a meeting. So but it's a great graphic. This is kind of our 9 simple rules for a successful meeting. First of all, you got to set up a meeting. These legislators are very busy during the session and non-session times. They have other things that they're doing. So sometimes you have to be a little persistent. As you prepare for the meeting comes our rule number 2. What's going to be most impactful to a legislator hearing from their constituent is not, here's these 17 studies and these data facts. It's going to be, a citizen coming in and saying, I live in your district. This is important to me because of this reason. This is why this is important to me. So you want to have that mental preparation beforehand. What's your story? Why are you passionate about this particular rule? Third rule is just kind of what we've always been taught. Just be on time, be courteous, be polite. These folks are pleasant. They're elected officials. They know how to deal with the public. It's not going to be confrontational. It's just going to be a polite conversation. So these next 4 are kind of what happens at the meeting. First of all, you just won't have much time. You'll be lucky to have 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. So be wise with it. Know what you're going to say. And this number 5 is in all caps. Tell that story. Tell your story. Tell why this issue is important to you. Make it personal to the legislator that it's personal to me. Have your 1 or 2, 3 kind of line items, concerns tick off. And then finally, you want to make an ask. That's kind of the term, but you can go in and talk and tell a great story about how you use the shaver's fork, but then you have to have an ask. I want you to pass or defeat bill number whatever, because I think it's an important time. And then give them a takeaway. Thank them for the meeting and follow up. If nothing more than just an email, thank you for meeting. If I could have the next slide, please. So I want to give you one more hint. What's the best thing that can happen in a meeting? Well, of course, obviously, yes, I agree with you completely, Mike. That's a great idea, and I'm going to go do it. But really, the best thing that can happen to a meeting is they ask you a question you don't know the answer to. And everybody goes, oh, no. Oh, this is terrible. I look like an idiot. I'm stupid. No, it's not. It's an opportunity to get back with them. Senator, I don't know the answer to that. But let me send you an email in 2 or 3 days. I know Danny will know the answer to that, and I'll get you that information. It's an automatic second contact. And here's where something like E-Day comes into place. And that's, let us know what the question is and we can follow up. We have lobbyists in the Capitol all day, every day. I have the next slide. And Danny pointed out in the chat that legislative offices often have only one office person, or maybe not in the office person, depending on whether you're a senator or delegate. So the office staff is incredibly helpful, and they will be very helpful to you. They are your best friend whenever you're being a citizen advocate in the legislature. So here's some good news about all those rules of meetings and questions I don't know the answer to. We're going to be providing you with updates on the legislation and the talking point about each bill. You're still going to tell your story, but we're going to help you with setting the meetings, what the concerns about the issues are, the ask, the piece of paper to hand them at the end. We'll have all those kind of takeaways for you as well. So if I could have the next slide, please. And finally, I think this is the last slide. We're going to have the Danny talked about, the Advocacy 201. Our West Virginia Environmental Council lobbyist will be at a webinar just like this, Tuesday, February 6th, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. They'll be talking about the specific bills, specific bill numbers, specific talking points, really give you that kind of information that will be helpful to you. And I encourage everybody to join us for that. Is that the last slide? Do we have another? Next slide.
That's it.
That's it. Great. Well, I appreciate everybody listening to Danny and I hope this information's been helpful. We still have some time here in our Lunch and Learn hour. So we'll turn it over to Jillian if there's any questions in the chat, or we'll start taking questions verbally. But thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mike and Danny. I really appreciate this. Yeah, does anyone have any questions right now? We kind of want to demystify is that a word? Meeting. E-Day is a great day to come to the Capitol. So any questions right now, you can put them in the chat, or take yourself off mute. Just let me know. We'll give a few minutes right here.
I just wanted to add that you can set up a meeting with any legislator at any time, and you don't have to do it yourself. You can call any of us or any of our organizations, and we will happily facilitate that for you. If you are interested in an issue, you can sit them down and talk to them about it. But the place where your voice is going to be the most powerful is going to be with your specific representative, the folks for whom you are their constituents. They answer to you, your vote matters to them, and they are there to represent your specific interests. So just wanted to share that. Just because one of your reps isn't on a committee or isn't actively working on a bill doesn't mean you can't still talk to them. And I encourage you to, because they will still get you some insider information and help connect you with the folks who are moving things. So all of them work for you, not just the ones that you help elect.
Yeah, I always say your delegates, your senators are human. I didn't know that until I started showing up at the Capitol, and I was like, oh yeah, these are people you see all the time at the grocery store. Hey, Chris, I see you have a question in the chat. Would you like to go off mute and ask it yourself, or I can ask it? So Chris was asking, is there a good source for a list of bills you're following and where they stand? I did put in a list of newsletters. E-Council, West Virginia Environmental Council, puts out a weekly newsletter with bill numbers. But Mike and Danny, do you have any other resources you'd like to share with Chris?
Yes, I do. I'm going to put in the chat the West Virginia Environmental Council's legislative priorities webpage, because it's got some good information about the bills. Yes, this is the current one. So that's a lot of the top priorities. But again, I would echo what Jillian said. Please um, sign up for Rivers, sign up for CAG, sign up for E-Council, and keep informed. And those will give very current and updated priorities.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, CAG is unique in this regard. We support E-Council's legislative priorities during the session with regards to climate and energy. But we have two other arms or areas of interest where we work, and those are healthcare and democracy. So if you're interested in either of those things too, please visit WVCAG or WVCAEF, that would be RC3.org for more information. We also send out a weekly newsletter on Wednesdays, so you're not too late. You can sign up now and get the first one, and that's right there on our webpage. And you'll also get information in addition to about climate and energy, about healthcare and democracy, including access to the vote and judicial issues. Thank you.
Yeah, and things change so fast. So these newsletters really are crucial. Bill numbers change, all of a sudden we're supporting a House over a Senate bill. So I really encourage these newsletters, and then you can unsubscribe after the session, but these are really the best way.
Mhm.
So, yeah, go ahead, Sandra.
Oh, yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for a great presentation. And I wanted to say one thing about being a citizen advocate and why that's so important. Number one, we can assume that our legislators already know about these issues, already understand everything there is to understand about the issues. And that's not true. They have so much on their plate that, it's hard for them, like anybody, to keep up. So going in with the idea of just informing them, educating them, and sharing your story can be really helpful to them. And in the bigger picture, we've got, lots of interest with lots of money to hire professional lobbyists to really, often have the ear of a lot of our legislators. So our citizen voices are really important in many ways.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. So Pamela Garrison had a question. What do you have to do to set up a meeting, forms, etc.? Pamela, do you want to come off mute and ask that? I will
I
also
can,
add
I
to
just,
Pamela's question though, can you Zoom with your legislator? But I'm sorry, was that Pamela who just joined in there?
yeah, I'm just like when you want to set up a meeting, what forms, where do you get the forms, or who do you get a hold of? How do you do it?
well,
I'm confused on that.
well, Pam, thanks for that question. I can take a first shot at that, and everybody else can jump in. There aren't forms. There's not a website. Basically, the best way to set up a meeting is to call their office or to email them. And there's not a magic thing to ask for or a magic way of saying it. I'm I'm Pamela. I'm interested in this issue. I'm going to be at E-Day. Can I meet with you? And that's really all you have to do. If you're having, and I think we've talked about how staff can be your best friend on getting those things set up. Talking to an assistant, somebody in the office that answers the phone can be extremely helpful to do that. And I think Kenneth has some input on that, so I'll let him add to it. And yes, we're happy to help set up the meeting also.
Yeah, I will share those links. All of us are happy to set that up. But yeah, Kenneth, go ahead.
All right, so in the few years that I've been coming here to the Capitol, in fact, I'm here now in the cafeteria. What I found most helpful is give the first introduction, like in person, while you see them through the hallway. You see your representative that you want to talk to. Say, hey, I'm Pamela Garrison, or I'm Kenny Matthews with AFSC. I want to talk to you about this issue. Typically, unless you can talk to them in an elevator pitch in like 2 minutes, you will want to set up a meeting so you can really get in depth and feed off ideas back and forth and have a conversation. The next thing you do, and I found this to work best, is go to their office. Like, especially if they're in committee meetings and they're in a committee meeting, go to their office and talk to their secretary there at the office and introduce yourself to their secretary and say, I spoke to Delegate Hanshaw earlier today, and I know he's in a committee meeting right now. I need a little bit more time with him to speak to him about this issue. Is there any time that you see available on his calendar for me to speak with him? And I found the nicer and more personal you are to their secretaries, the easier it is for you to get a meeting with them, because they're the gatekeepers for those representatives in those offices. So if they get used to seeing you up there, or you having decent conversation, there was even a time when I saw one staff, this one secretary, she had just had a birthday, and I saw, like, oh, you just had a birthday, well, happy belated birthday, kind of thing. Like, noticing those little details to get used to you, and saying, like, oh, this is a pretty cool person, they can talk to them for 5 minutes. And a lot of times they'll move stuff in the schedule and make time for you to be able to have a sit down conversation. The key is, once you get those meetings, try not to be confrontational with the meetings, right? Try to just, have a conversation. And regardless if, they don't necessarily agree with you on that particular issue, you always want to leave the door open for them to agree with you on other issues. I had Senator Mike Stewart last year. Was completely against voting rights restoration, right? And he made it very well known in a committee meeting and things like that. But afterwards, I went to him and talked to him in the hallway. I said, I just want to let you know that I don't take, your that personal. And I think there's good work to be done on both of our sides. And then he invited me to his office and had like an hour-long conversation with me about stuff. And he was really integral and really an advocate for the CAPES reform bill later on. Now, had I blown up on him and say, you're a jerk, or, you should look at it like this, or you're being narrow-minded and all this stuff, he would have never been open to any further conversations that I had with him later on in the session. So I think those are the things that you kind of want to keep in mind, is that one is that the secretaries are the gatekeepers, but you don't want the first. I feel like you don't want the first introduction of who you are to be over a message or necessarily a phone call. You want them to at least see you face to face, even if it's for 30 seconds. And so that way, when you do set up those meetings later, you'd be like, remember I talked to you in the hallway about this? And they'd be like, oh yeah, it'll jog their memory. And that way they're already open to having that further conversation with them.
That's excellent advice. And all of the above, especially the be polite and be persistent. That's very, very.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually the best advice I've heard in a long time, besides Danny and Mike. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Jillian, if there's not another question, I have something else to bring up, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
E-Day is kind of the day to focus on environmental issues, and there's a wide range of them, and different groups have different priorities on them. One of the things that we've been able to do is we may have some for a community group or a college group or somebody that's coming to E-Day that might need a little help with the gas expense or that kind of thing. We may have some limited funding as well. So if you would reach out to E-Council if your group wants to come and be part of E-Day. I think the registration sign up was just put in the chat, so sign up, but then also contact E-Council about maybe being able to give you some help in getting there.
Yeah, and we are here to help you. We're here to help you get to E-Day, Environmental Day at the Capitol, February 13th. We're here to help you meet with your legislators. We're here to, please, we have all the resources. Don't be shy. And if you're shy, it's okay. Like, just email us and we can help you and train you and give you that advice.
And any of us are happy to hold one-on-ones. I just wanted to pop in there. I am an anxious human being. It is who I am, and it permeates everything I do. And so I like to feel really, really prepared going in. Like Kenny said, you want to make sure that you have established a bit of a relationship first. You've at least, touched base. But when it comes to the messaging, especially on delicate issues, you want to be able to at least kind of converse about how it affects you. And so I am happy to run some one-on-ones with anybody at any time and at your schedule. Those of us who are in the organizing world, we don't work regular 9-to-5s. We are available to the people, and so please feel free to reach out at any point, and we can go over what you want to say and how you want to say it, and run through some scenarios. And we're even willing. This is a service I did last year for a lot of students. They had it all set up and they were very brave and like ready to go on their own, but they were terrified of wandering through the Capitol. I don't know if y'all have been to our Capitol. It's just white marble everywhere and everything looks exactly the same. So navigating the Capitol physically is sometimes a little intimidating. So they just wanted somebody who knew the ropes to walk them to and from their various meetings and to be like, you're doing great, you got this. And so I did that, and it was one of the best and most productive days I have had in many years of working here. So I am happy to perform any of those services or any variation of that for anybody at any time. If it's just you, that's cool. You got a group together of your neighbors who were real upset about one particular thing. Let's go. Let's go. We'll all hang out and we'll get it figured out and get you in front of the people that you want to talk to in the way that is most comfortable for you.
Yeah, and
Thank
I
you,
want
Jillian.
to jump on Danny too, is it's groups. If you're by yourself and you're like, hey, I want other people, email us. We know who's in your session, in your area. We can do a group plan together. I mean, really, I just cannot stress enough that these lawmakers are humans. They shop at your grocery stores. They, go to your public lands. They really know what's going on, and they are really easy to talk to. But in a group, we are happy to help add people to your group so you're not by yourself. And again, it's not a half-hour conversation that time. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, and that can make a really big impact. Let's see. I'm going to check the chat really fast. Mike wants to add anything to that. So I see Ken in the Kenneth in the chat, me and Joanna Vance do narrative training for people wanting to learn how to formulate their story of self, us, and now. Yeah, I mean, really, your stories is what makes a difference, and really scientific proof that stories stay with people. So when you have a story, that really helps.
Kenneth or Joanna, how do we get in touch with you all to learn more about your training to tell stories?
I'll put my email in chat as well as Joanna's, and that way, anybody can get a hold of us and let us know. I can even give you send you an email copy of the form that we use that kind of outlines how to do your story. Because like I said, your story, especially Danny said, how your story or how the issue relates to you and personalizes to you is super integral to making sure that they see the human aspect of the issue, because somebody can understand the fiscal note to it or understand the underlying causes, but until they see a lot of times that human person behind the issue, you don't see a lot of momentum. Something not involving like the environment kind of thing, but we saw a federal investigation into the regional jails get sparked because of a couple women's testimony in front of a judiciary committee as to how they were being treated in the regional jails. Right. So if they hadn't come into the committee and testified on their lack of receiving feminine hygiene products, how while they were pregnant, they were shackled to a hospital bed where the correctional officer was the one to cut their baby's umbilical cord. Like all these really personal stories, a lot of people wouldn't have had such a pressing urgency to deal with the issues, and that spurred a lot of response. So your story, how you can relate it to you and show the commonality with the issue, because the issue may affect you, but it may not affect me. But if you can show how we have a common thread that will cause the issue to me to want to care about that issue, then you'll see a lot quicker response and a lot more of an openness and willingness to act or have conversations regarding those issues. That's why we always say, your story is important, but also the story of us is important as well, showing how we are in this together, the commonality, the mutuality that binds us together.
Great, thank you. That is great advice. And we would love to follow up with you to maybe collaborate on some things. Thank you, Kenneth.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we have 3 minutes left. I just want to see if anyone else has any more questions. I will be emailing all these links and resources to everyone, but I'm just going to give it a minute here to see if anyone else has a question. Well, we hope to see you. We have another webinar on February 6th, and that will be with our lobbyists. I will put the registration link in there. And we'll email this all to you all. Any closing comments from Danny and Mike?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I just wanted to share, thank you for being involved with any or all of our organizations in whatever regard that you're involved. None of this works without members, because political power is one thing, and getting to the Capitol, being a lobbyist, telling them what you think, but all of that has to be carried by. There has to be an underlayment of people power, and that has to come from y'all, our members, or the people who click through our action alerts, and they have to know that it's not just us speaking for you, that you are there speaking for yourselves as well. So none of it happens without you. Thanks for being here and taking the first step, or maybe the 50th step, depending on where you are in this process. But regardless, we appreciate you.
I couldn't say it better. It's everybody in this room and everybody that goes to E-Day, answers an email, is part of an organization. It makes a difference. It matters. It's critically important. And thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah, I agree. Again, these, our lawmakers are there. They work for you. They're human and they work for you. So make them work for you. We will be sending all these resources in email. We're going to be sending the recording out. And I just want to thank you all for coming tonight, this afternoon, and have a wonderful day. And we look forward to working with you throughout the session. All right. Thank you, everyone.